Have you ever felt completely exhausted, but at the same time wired, anxious, or unable to relax or sleep? Like no matter how well you eat or how hard you try to manage your stress, your body just isn't responding the way it used to. If that sounds familiar, this episode is for you. Today, we're diving into what's really happening beneath the surface when it comes to stress, energy, and that wired but tired feeling so many women experience in midlife. We're joined by Dr. Scott Sherr, a board-certified internal medicine physician and expert in health optimization, to break down these concepts in a practical, approachable way and to explore tools like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, GABA, and methylene blue, and what actually matters when it comes to feeling better in your body. Welcome to the Art of Living Well podcast. We're Marnie and Stephanie, and each week we share grounded, practical tools to help you feel strong, steady, and energized in midlife and beyond. Welcome, Dr. Scott. How are you? We are so happy for you to join us today on our show.
I'm happy to be here, ladies. It's always nice to be interviewed by multiple people, especially two lovely ladies with beautiful camera lighting and beautiful teeth. It's great.
Well, thank you. Yes, thank you.
I'm flattering beforehand. I try, So.
So we'd love to start this conversation by just sharing with our listeners what initially drew you to this work. And was there a moment in your own life or your practice where you realized that stress and energy were much more connected than we initially think?
Great questions. So I think my very quick story is that I'm a son of a very crazy chiropractor. I grew up on Long Island in New York. He's still in practice. His name's Dr. Alan Sherr. And I always learned that I didn't know there was a medical establishment until I was much older, basically. And so I knew that there was lots of different ways to think about the body, about healing, about diet, about just overall function from a very holistic way. I always like to say that my father never had a box with lines on it. It was just maybe points on a piece of paper. But when I was looking at where I wanted to go with my life, I wanted to do something similar. I decided to go to medical school with actually his encouragement. The thought being that if you can learn both sides of the world of medicine, then I could kind of figure it out from there. And so I ended up being an internal medicine physician. I trained in Baltimore for overall about 10 years in that city. It's a city that reads, a city that also has other monikers as well. But it was a good time to be in Baltimore actually at that time. And from there, I kind of developed my own integrative practice. It started off being really focused on hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I learned about that when I was in medical school and in a kind of a trauma center, and also in outpatient centers too. But then I learned that it was a great technology that could be used both in the inside medical world and also in the unconventional alternative world as well. And then over the last over almost 15 years, I've been creating my own integrative practice within a construct that is not only hyperbaric therapy, but a kind of a bigger container that I call health optimization medicine. That's actually the name of a nonprofit that I also help run called Health Optimization Medicine in Practice that trains practitioners on how to optimize health from a foundational perspective. And so that's the foundation of what I do. And I use hyperbaric therapy as a fantastic tool and technology to help along the way. To your second question, which is when did I realize stress, anxiety, some of these sort of things that you sort of described in the beginning were a part of my world, was when I turned 40 years old, right? So everything was pretty easy until then. I slept, I woke up, I did my work. But after that, it's been a very much of a different ride. And I think that's because I have 4 kids, and between 30 and 40, I had those 4 kids, or my wife did. And I was obviously there too. I don't remember much of that decade, to be honest. And I think it was just after that, I was like, okay, now things are changing and things are evolving, and my energy is very different, and how much sleep I need is different, and how I can fall asleep is different. And so what is going on? Well, maybe I need to actually work on my nervous system regulation a little bit more, something I never really thought of before.
It's so interesting because we're hearing more and more about stress and nervous system regulation. And that wasn't even on my radar when I was raising my kids. And
of course not.
Stephanie and I are in our 50s. And so we've been through she still has a kid in the house. My kids are out of the house. She has 2 in the house. Sorry, not rushing you. Anyway, but I think you hit the nail right on the head. Like, why do so many women, and maybe men, I'm not a man, so I can't speak for what it feels like to be a man in midlife, but why do they feel like their bodies aren't responding the same anymore? And there's more stress, there's less energy, maybe less sleep. And is this a hormone thing? Is this a lifestyle thing? Is this a nervous system thing? What's going on?
Yeah, it's a really good question. But so what happens is that most of us are running at a certain level and are slowly deteriorating, and that's just the nature of being human, right? We make energy in our body. We make this currency called ATP. We're making 150 pounds of this currency every single day. And slowly over time, things start not working as well. And we have this sort of slow burn, but at the same time, we also have these other aspects that are happening, especially hormones is a big one. For women, it's obvious, right? Once you're starting to go through perimenopause, your hormones start swinging pretty dramatically. For men, it's a little bit different, right? For men, andropause is what it's called. And it is a thing. It is a real, condition where men do lose their hormones, but they lose them much slower. So it's not like they fall off a cliff like women do. It's like men at starting the age of about 30 or so, their testosterone levels start dropping as well. And so slowly from there. But for women, it's much more significant because all of a sudden, where did my progesterone and estrogen go? Or why I'm having these huge swings of it? So you were able to maintain at a certain level, but all of a sudden you have two hormones that are going crazy that are so essential for your capacity, right? So estrogen is extremely important for your mitochondrial function, right? Estrogen is a huge mitochondrial optimizer. This is why during parts of the female cycle, especially during ovulation, when estrogen is the highest, you feel fantastic as a female. Like this is when you want to go out. This is when you want to work out. This is when you want to go to the bars and wear a little bit less clothing as well, right? But this is the nature of how we've been evolved. Women have been evolved to like, okay, I'm ready to procreate now, right? And I'm out there but not just that, of course, other things too. But so when estrogen starts going all over the place, your mitochondria go into a significant dysfunctional state. And then, so if you're already riding at high levels of stress, right? And you're already kind of putting yourself at sort of max capacity, and then all of a sudden your estrogen levels are going all over the place, that's going to drop you. And it's going to make it much harder for you to feel as good as you did even, a month or two before that. And you think of progesterone as well. Progesterone is your master regulatory hormone for a neurotransmitter called GABA. GABA is your primary inhibitory relaxing neurotransmitter. It helps you sleep, right? And this is why sleep gets so disrupted during perimenopause as well and menopause afterwards. And progesterone levels dropping are a huge issue here. It also affects your gut microbiome. It affects multiple other aspects of your physiology, but sleep is one of the biggest ones. And then mood regulation too. So for females especially, and all of us really, as you think about it, we're all sort of programmed, especially as parents, to be like on all the time, right? And so when you're on all the time, you're putting yourself in that sympathetic mode. It's your fight or flight nervous system. It's a nervous system that's supposed to be elevated when you're getting chased by something, but we're getting chased by a crying baby that has a diaper that's getting everything all over the floor. Like that's also stressful, right? And then you add on to that, you're not sleeping well already because you have young children. And all of a sudden, maybe they're a little bit older, but now you're not having the same hormonal balance as you did before, but your stress hormones are still elevated. And then you have this sort of cycle or pattern that I call the sympathetic spiral of doom, which sounds ominous, but it really is a pattern that, is so evident in so many of us. And women tend to be like really evidently falling off that cliff because of hormones specifically, where men are like, I'm okay. I'm just like me, like I'm just not sleeping as well, or like, things are just not as good. But for women, it can be really dramatic.
It can be. And that was such a great explanation. I just think linking hormones, which we've talked about quite a bit, though, with the mitochondrial function and what's happening with our mitochondria as a result of the hormone fluctuation. So yeah. I thought that was great tying those two in together. So we talk about the tired and wired feeling. Yeah. And I love the sympathetic spiral of doom. I think I've heard you on a reel or Instagram or something talking about that. So can you dive into that a little bit more? And really talking about mitochondrial dysfunction as part of that. Like, what does that mean practically for women? Because all they care about is they want, their hormones balanced. They want more energy. They want to be able to sleep, right?
Right.
So for most midlife women out there, and reduce the brain fog, because I think that is also a real symptom that a lot of people are unfortunately facing.
Yeah.
And I want to add one more thing to that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think that we're hearing about mitochondrial function so much today, and we all may know what that means, but I think the general person out there maybe is like, what is this? Why do people keep talking about mitochondria? And what does that mean to me? And what do I do about it? So maybe try and put it in layman's terms as well.
Yeah, we can start there with the mitochondria themselves. Good example. I have a 15-year-old daughter. A couple months ago, she's like, Dad, here's the cell. And I remember this when I was in science class. Yep. You learn that there's a mitochondria, there's a nucleus, there's a cytoplasm, there's Golgi bodies, all that stuff, right? So you have this beautiful picture of the cell, and you learn there's one mitochondria. And what do you learn? You learn that it's the powerhouse of your cell. And the powerhouse means that it's like the battery of your cell. It's what makes energy. But what you don't learn is that some cells in your body have very few mitochondria per cell, and you have other cells in your body that have thousands of mitochondria per cell. You have quad, huge amounts of mitochondria in your body, and they are making your energy. And as I alluded to earlier, you're making about 150 pounds of energy every single day, right? So 150 pounds of ATP. ATP is your energy currency. That's what we make in the mitochondria. And so when you're thinking about energy, like, wow, that's a huge amount of energy that you need, right? There are certain cells in the body that need a lot of energy. Certain cells of the body don't need as much. So, quiz question for you ladies.
Oh, God.
What is the type of cell in the body that has the most mitochondria per cell? That's the most energy intensive. And I'll give you a hint. It's not the brain. And I'll give you a second hint. It's only in females.
The uterus?
The eggs. So eggs have the most mitochondria per cell of any cell in the body. And that's because making a baby is extremely energy intensive, right? Men's sperm also has a lot of mitochondria per cell because it has to swim to the egg, et cetera, right? But the egg has the most mitochondria per cell. But after the reproductive organs, which have mitochondria per cell in the thousands, then it's your brain, your heart, your liver, your musculoskeletal system. So where do symptoms of mitochondrial dysfunction typically show themselves? Well, fertility rates, they're not going up. They're going down dramatically. I mean, I'm sure you know people that have needed to get IVF when they were in their 20s or even, 30s, right? And so it's definitely something that's a huge issue. And then, of course, brain fog, mental health problems, concentration issues, mood issues. These are all related at its base to mitochondrial dysfunction. And so the question becomes, well, there's a lot of mitochondria. They make a lot of energy. Why aren't they working, right? And so the statistics are kind of crazy where about 94% of US adults do not have optimally functioning mitochondria. So only 6% of US adults are metabolically and mitochondrially functioning healthily. So only 6%. Okay.
Wow.
How is it measured? And what symptoms do they have to be part of the 94%?
Right. So the way that this is done is they look at what's called metabolic health. You've heard the term metabolic health before. Yeah. Metabolic health sounds like an easy term, but people don't really understand what that means. What metabolic health really means at its base is that can you make energy effectively in your cells? And once you make energy effectively, are you able to manage the stress of making energy? Because when we make energy, that ATP, that 150 pounds of energy we make every single day, that energy is not free. We're like a gasoline powered car. We make a huge amount of energy. As I said, 150 pounds of ATP every single day, but we also make waste products of making energy. We make carbon dioxide, water. Carbon dioxide, we breathe off, it goes to the plants. It's a beautiful cycle of life, etc., right? But we also make what are called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. And these free radicals, the other name for them, these are really important. These are small molecules that are reactive that tell the mitochondria whether it's time to make more energy, to make less energy, to do other things that it needs to do to protect itself, or etc. And so we have antioxidants in the body to help neutralize this reactive oxygen species, this stress. Or do we, right? So if we don't have enough antioxidant capacity, you're going to build up with this reactive oxygen species and not be able to make energy effectively over time. So if you're metabolically healthy, you take energy that we make, that we take in from our macronutrients, specifically our fat and carbohydrates, proteins not as much. We take the energy from our food, bring it into the mitochondria, make energy effectively, and then we are able to neutralize the stress of making energy. So only 6% of US adults are able to do this effectively. Now, the spectrum is obviously large. You have people that have severe mitochondrial dysfunction, and you have people that have mild mitochondrial dysfunction. But across that whole spectrum is 94% of the US population. Okay. And so symptoms, as you were asking, Stephanie, are myriad, depending on the kind of the main area where things are really most intensively seen, but mostly it's going to be where the most mitochondria are per cell. So if it's the brain, as I mentioned, mood issues, brain fog, concentration, mental health problems, depression, insomnia, anxiety, these all can be related to mitochondrial dysfunction. And then go over to detoxification issues, or if you have issues with exercise and recovery. And so when people ask me, well, Dr. Scott, like, what does it feel like to not have mitochondria that aren't working well? I'm like, and you mentioned this in the intro, Stephanie, you don't recover as well as you used to. Your mood is all over the place. It's not what it used to be. It's not just hormones. It's part of it, potentially, but it's also mitochondrial dysfunction, as we were mentioning earlier. Do you feel like you used to be able to do things like maybe just have a bad night of sleep and still be okay the next day? Or you can't do that anymore. You get on an airplane and you can't recover after time zone changes. You feel like everybody else is not getting sick, but you're getting sick all the time, because this also affects your immune system as well when the mitochondria aren't working very well. And so mitochondrial dysfunction is as you were, I think, Marnie, as you said, it's becoming like a hot buzzword because it's really the foundation of our health. Is if our mitochondria aren't working very well, nothing else is going to work well. You have to address this by understanding why the mitochondria aren't working well. Is it estrogen fluctuations, for example, as a big part of it? or is it others? And maybe I should get into that. So the main reasons for mitochondrial dysfunction, number one, is actually insulin resistance. So if you have high blood sugars, you're going to be putting a lot of stress on your mitochondria and trying to make more energy than you need, and causes a lot of stress. Number two, this is not sort of in order from like the amount, but medications that we take on a regular basis, things like proton pump inhibitors, metformin, even birth control pills. Birth control pills will deplete you with nutrients, which will make your mitochondria harder for them to work. Also, toxins in our environment, toxic exposures in pollution, in food and water, etc. Infections like COVID infections or Epstein-Barr or mold or Lyme. These all cause significant mitochondrial dysfunction. And then sort of the overarching to a lot of this is this sympathetic spiral of doom, as I was alluding to before, because sympathetic activation, when you're chronically in fight or flight all the time, you're pumping out hormones like cortisol, you're pumping out neurotransmitters like adrenaline or noradrenaline that are putting a lot of stress on your mitochondria too.
This episode is brought to you by Good Health Saunas, your key to relaxation, rejuvenation, and better health. If you want to feel better in your body every single day, infrared sauna therapy is a powerful tool. It supports detoxification, immune health, muscle recovery, better sleep, and even healthier looking skin. And honestly, it just feels incredible. I absolutely love my Good Health Sauna and use it regularly. My husband does as well. It's become a part of our weekly routine, especially after our workouts or long days when we just need to rest and unwind. Good Health Saunas offers a commercial-grade infrared saunas with a lifetime warranty and exceptional customer service. Their team walks you through everything from selection to installation, making the process simple and seamless. You can visit their stores at the Mall of America in Minnesota or in Appleton and Waukesha, Wisconsin. Head to goodhealthsaunas.com and mention the Art of Living Well podcast for your exclusive discount. So if someone, I'm thinking about, you said 94%, was that the statistic you said? So if someone feels like, I don't know if you can equate high energy and good energy to good mitochondrial function. But if someone has high energy and is sleeping well and isn't feeling some of those things, would you still say that they're like, just as a normal part of aging, aren't you losing mitochondrial dysfunction? Or as a person ages, let's say they're doing pretty well health-wise, and I know that's maybe not the norm, but doesn't everybody's mitochondria lose steam after a while, or no, if you're doing certain things?
So it's a good question. And I think that what you're really kind of diving into here is really how you define aging. And there's actually different schools of thought here, right? Because we know as we get older, yes, our system is going to get less optimized, but does it have to be that way? Or can you significantly decrease the rate of it? That is absolutely the case. We don't have there are these really cool new technologies like mitochondrial transplantation and crazy things like that are happening now. That's futuristic, but that's starting to happen. But in general, the goal for all of us is to slow down the process, right? And because most people in my world think of aging really as a chronic disease, in the sense that there are ways to mitigate this in various ways that you can at least slow down the whole progression. Knowing that, yes, because we make so much energy every single day, we're making waste products every single day, and that energy is not free. So always keeping that in mind. Yes, we're going to have deterioration for sure, but we can slow that down. To your question, if somebody feels good energy throughout the day, they're sleeping well, they recover well, very likely their mitochondrial function is quite good overall. That's not the majority of people that I know. I'm sure that that's not the majority of people that you know as well. Maybe when you were in 20s and 30s, and that's what most people remember, right? They were in their 20s or 30s, early 30s, or maybe late 30s, where they would wake up, they would just do what they needed to do. They never thought about the fatigue, never thought about their brain fog, never thought about their pain, never thought about, et cetera, what they were even going to have to eat the next day or earlier, because they just could eat mostly what they wanted, right? Mm-hmm. This is changing because of so much toxicity that we have in our environment now, including toxic people and the toxic aspects of stress as well. This is a big deal. And that's why that sympathetic activation, and it kind of brings into that sympathetic spiral of doom in a couple different ways, which I can go into more, but I'll pause for questions.
Well, I think it would be good to go into that a little bit more, because I do believe, and Marnie and I have had this conversation with a lot of people on the podcast and clients, that women their cortisol levels are very high.
Yeah.
And Marnie and I test our cortisol. I know mine's been high at various points, and we're in a state of constant stress, and we don't really even realize it actually until you do some testing, because it's just become normalized to some degree.
Compensate. Yeah.
Right. And so what's happening over time, and why is it so important to address our mitochondrial function now versus waiting until we get to like that completely can't get out of bed, or just having really debilitating symptoms? Because I think we just kind of plug along, and life isn't, for the average person, it may not be awful, but it's certainly not great. And we still have a lot of years left to live, hopefully.
Right. And then the goal, I don't know if, have you heard of the term morbidity compression before? This is one of my favorites. So you've heard of health span, probably.
Yeah.
Health span is to live as long as you can, as healthy as you can. Morbidity compression is a corollary to this, which is you want to live as long as you can for as healthy as you can and die as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So that's called
that.
Yes. So that you're great, you're awesome, you just jumped out of a plane yesterday, and tomorrow, you die in your sleep, right?
Yeah.
But or after a very like a very short illness or something like that. So going back to cortisol though, which I think is important, and we'll go into the sympathetic spiral. People vilify cortisol, right? Cortisol is a hormone. It's your stress hormone, right? We need cortisol. Let's just be clear about this. Cortisol, if you did not have cortisol, you would not be alive. Cortisol is supposed to rise in the morning when you wake up and then slowly go down as the day goes on. And then it's supposed to be at its lowest before you go to bed. Cortisol is supposed to rise not only when you wake up to kind of wake you up out of your slumber, but also to be available if you have sympathetic activation, if you have a reason to be in fight or flight. So sympathetic activation, fight or flight, this is your stress side of your nervous system. Mm-hmm. The other side of your nervous system, just to give the whole picture, is called your parasympathetic nervous system. It's your rest, digest, detoxify, and heal nervous system. Okay. Mm-hmm. But as you were mentioning, Stephanie, most of us, because modern society really rewards it, is to be in this sympathetic mode most of the time. And over time, as you also very well said, we don't even realize it, right? In medical school, I had shirts with my friends that said sleep is for quitters.
Yeah.
Prime example here, right? You'll sleep when you're dead. Or I grew up outside of New York City. It's the city that never sleeps. It's the hustle. It's the real. And we get used to this. We get rewarded from this in society. And as a parent, as a mom, especially, my God, man, as a mom, if you're also working and then you're also, you have a partner and like, you're supposed to do everything and be everything. And my wife and I love these signs there was billboard signs in California when we used to live there. It had a dad on there with a kid and said, "Dads, just show up." She got so pissed with that sign, right? Like, that's so ridiculous. And but that's how society kind of has it so much more weighted for moms to do everything, right? And so there's so much more pressure on that side. And then you're in that sympathetic fight or flight. So you have not only is the cortisol just rising in the morning and then maybe a couple times during the day, but it's all day long. Okay. So what happens here, right? If you have these stress hormones that are elevated all the time from the stress of being alive, like being a mom, having a job and having a relationship, et cetera, maybe even worse, maybe you have like trauma when you were younger, or maybe you've had really terrible things that have not allowed you to be in a safe place like ever, or not for a long time. That gives you this stress response. And then those hormones put a huge amount of real stress on your mitochondria specifically. And when your mitochondria are stressed over long periods of time, they stop making energy effectively. Instead of making all that energy, they actually go into something called the cell danger response. But this is not my term. This is a real term that basically prevents your mitochondria from making energy effectively. And then what happens is the body, your sympathetic, your sort of psychology is like, I'm not making enough energy. I feel terrible. And you get more stressed as a result of that. And this is where that loop continues, where you get more sympathetic activation, more mitochondrial dysfunction, and it kind of goes and goes and goes. And what's interesting about this spiral is that it can happen and start not only from external stress, from things like we were just describing, but also from internal stress. So those infections, mitochondrial toxins from medications, from insulin resistance. And it can start that way, even if it's not externally causing stress, or estrogen and progesterone changes, right? So you were okay until you weren't, because now you don't have enough estrogen around and your mitochondria are like, what just happened? I can't compensate anymore. And then and then that spiral starts getting out of control.
It's so much to think about. Like, I'm just thinking about stress plays such a big role in everything, literally everything. Like, you could be doing everything right from a health perspective, but if you have stress in your life, or if you're living in your sympathetic nervous system most of the time, eating well and sleeping and doing all the things really don't matter. I mean, they matter, but the stress just causes so much damage.
Yeah, when you're clamped down really, really hard, think about it, nothing can heal, nothing can detoxify, and nothing is going to change. So this is like, I don't agree with regular doctors when they say this most of the time. You're taking your vitamins, you're just giving yourself expensive urine, right?
Oh, my husband says that.
That's what conventional doctors will say. But if you actually are in that sympathetic spiral all the time, nothing is going to change. And these are patients that I've seen over the years. I've been in practice, over 20 years now, and it's almost always evident to me within the first 30 seconds to 5 minutes max. If I know that if I give them supplements and change their diet and optimize their health using a foundational program like I have, that it's going to work. If I know I can almost always know if it's not going to work within that time frame. Because if there's so much sympathetic activation, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do and shift in them and help them do and facilitate without downregulating the nervous system response. But, and this is the big but that's super important, is that what'll happen with a lot of men and women is that, oh, I need to decrease my stress. Finally, they realize that they're in this sort of sympathetic loop, but then they try to decrease their nervous system tone and they crash. Because they didn't have enough support along the way. Their mitochondria, their immune system, their hormones, they're all trashed because of being in sympathetic for such a long period of time. So if you just try to calm your nervous system down, and again, you don't tell anybody to calm down, right? That's not what we do. I don't tell my wife to calm down. I would not tell anybody.
Never. No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I have my son, he's 8 years old. I have 3 girls and my youngest is a boy. He's 8. And he's like, Dad, what are some things you don't tell girls?
Calm down.
And that's one of them, right?
Yes.
And the other one is, there's more, but that was one.
And you always say, you're right.
Yeah.
You never tell a woman that they look tired. Never say that, because that means they don't look good.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. But the idea here is that, and I figured this out over the years, and I was just talking to another friend just a couple of days ago. She's a friend of mine. She's got Lyme, she has mold, and she's been stressed, really, really stressed. And her doctor gave her something to calm her nervous system down, and she crashed, lost all of her energy, couldn't focus. And that's a big risk. If you're looking to downregulate the nervous system, you have to have support along the way, or you can get into a place where you feel even worse, which is what I'm trying to prevent, in most of the people I work with.
Yeah. And so because we want to get into some of these different modalities, and maybe this is a good segue. So like, what do you suggest? We want to talk about the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We want to talk about methylene blue, and you pick which one makes sense given where we are in this conversation, as far as how you can support a system while reducing the stress. So it sounds like it's really a two-prong approach. You got it. Exactly. And so you have to really break the cycle using a two-pronged approach. The first is to give some mitochondrial support. And that could be estrogen and progesterone in some cases, right? That could be getting on hormones. But oftentimes I find that actually is not enough for a lot of women. Getting on HRT can be helpful for sure. But I've had countless docs that I work with, colleagues say it wasn't until I started something that directly worked on the mitochondria that they started feeling better. And this is where methylene blue starts coming in to the picture, right? And so methylene blue is a compound that's been around a long time, but we know very low doses of it, if you have a good clean source and you trust the people that are making it, because it also could be contaminated with heavy metals if you're not careful, right? Like lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. We don't want those. Not good for mitochondrial function. But methylene blue at very low doses, around 4 to 8 milligrams at the minimum, typically around 25 milligrams-ish, sometimes higher, but usually around that range. What it does is this particular compound comes into the mitochondria and immediately starts supporting energy and detoxification. I mentioned earlier that our cells are like gasoline-powered cars. Methylene blue is more like an electric-powered car. It allows you to make energy without causing a lot of stress on the system because it can work directly like an antioxidant too. So energy, yes. Detoxification, also yes. And so that combination is extremely effective at slowly increasing your capacity, your mitochondrial capacity. And I can give you a couple examples. I had another colleague of mine, almost a year ago now. He's like, Doc, he's a New Yorker. He's got his good New York accent, which I'm not going to repeat here. I can get into it. I grew up in New York, but it's hard for me to do it,
On the spot.
Yeah.
So he's like, Doc, I have anxiety for like a decade. I take methylene blue. It's gone. Why? And I'm like, so anxiety for a decade, right? He tried antidepressants, all those things. He didn't like any of that stuff. He's like, well, why is my anxiety better taking methylene blue? I'm like, well, first of all, what methylene blue does is actually allowing your mitochondria to make energy more effectively. And what are most mental health disorders? Depression, schizophrenia, even bipolar, these all have a significant mitochondrial component, right? And not the only thing, oftentimes, of course, but it's a big component of it. And so he started taking some methylene blue. His mitochondria finally got some support it needed. And all of a sudden, his system was able to calm down because there was more energy available. So that's an example of what I've seen before. That's not always the case. Oftentimes, you often have to bring on the sympathetic downregulation, which we can talk about later. But the mitochondrial support with methylene blue, it sounds weird and crazy to people because this is not a compound that most people knew about until a couple of years ago. And it's a very, very blue pigment. It doesn't come from the ground. It comes from a lab it was made in the 1870s, a long time ago. The first drug registered with the FDA back in 1897. But I've been using it clinically for the last 6 years, and I've been floored with the capacity improvements I've seen in patients using it.
So I have some questions about that. I mean, people rave about methylene blue. The people that take it love it. I've never taken it. I'm very interested in trying it. Is there anyone that, like, is there a downside? Is there anyone that shouldn't be taking it? And also, do you take it indefinitely, or are you taking it specifically to increase your mitochondrial function? And then once you feel like you've done that, you're stopping it. Like, how does that work?
A great question. So when it comes to people that shouldn't take methylene blue, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you shouldn't take methylene blue because there's some evidence maybe it could be bad in those cases. If you have high blood pressure, methylene blue can sometimes increase blood pressure. I actually use it for this reason in people with something called POTS, if you've heard of it before. POTS, because they typically have a lot of inflammation and low blood pressure. And methylene blue actually binds something in circulation called nitric oxide that actually decreases their, improves their vascular tone so that they actually get higher blood pressure, which is good. But if you have high blood pressure already, some patients will have an increase in their blood pressure if they take methylene blue. So you have to be aware of that. Also, people that have kidney dysfunction, because methylene blue concentrates and is excreted in the kidneys. So if you take methylene blue, your urine will be blue. So don't be surprised, everybody. Okay. But if you have non-working kidneys, it's not going to get excreted as well. So you have to be aware of that. If you're on a medication, an antidepressant like an SSRI, an SNRI, these medications increase serotonin. Methylene blue also does increase serotonin and norepinephrine. It does it dose dependent. So small amounts will do it a little bit. More will do it more. The theoretical risk is something called serotonin syndrome, but that has never been described with oral methylene blue before, only IV. So I use it in patients with antidepressants all the time. But if you're on an antidepressant, please work with a practitioner before taking methylene blue just to make sure. The symptoms that I've seen are more GI related, so GI distress and maybe some headaches, but those typically get better. But work with a provider if you're on any medications really before starting any supplements or anything like this. So that's the answer to your first question. The second aspect of it, which is, well, how long do you take it for? And that's a really important one, right? So I see methylene blue mostly, Marnie, as a bridge for people. It's something that can help them now while they're on the longer path of optimizing their health and optimizing their vitamins, their minerals, their nutrients, their gut, their neurotransmitters, their hormones, their stress as well. So these things take time, right? Where methylene blue can come in right now and support. And so if you think of the alphabet, which is 26 letters long, the last time I thought about this, if you're at point A, B, C, D on the alphabet of trying to get better, and you're thinking, well, Z is really far away. I mean, there's no real end, right? There's always, the path continues, but to be optimized or to be closer to it, it can be really difficult to think about that, right? Or to get there. Where methylene blue comes in is it give you like 10 or 15 letters head start, right? It can get you a little bit further along that path. And then all of a sudden you have a little bit more energy, a little more capacity, a little more ability to take a walk around the block or take some supplements that would have been harder for you to do beforehand and be more compliant about them. And then over the long term, as you're more optimized, hopefully, you need methylene blue less, only when you have more mitochondrial stress and you can take it. So an example, traveling. When you're on an airplane, you have low oxygen levels on an airplane. You're pressurized to about 8,000 feet above sea level. That is a hypoxic stress. That's a low oxygen stress for your body and for your mitochondria specifically. Methylene blue can come in and work just like oxygen actually and help you make energy effectively so you don't feel as bad when you get to your destination. So I live in Colorado. I'm at 5,500 feet. I feel glorious when I get off an airplane because I'm usually at sea level. But if you live in Minnesota, as you guys do, and you're traveling to, well, especially to Colorado at 5,000 feet, you're not going to feel very good because you have low oxygen. So everybody that comes visits me gets methylene blue before they get on the plane, hopefully. And when I travel and if I'm going to altitude, I will definitely take methylene blue with me. So that's an example of when you would take it sort of as needed, right? Or you can even use it for endurance actually, because it can help you with more it's called aerobic capacity, more capacity to make energy from oxygen longer. So I have my elite athletes that use it. I was just talking to a guy yesterday. He sent me this really funny message about how he's a jiu-jitsu guy, and he finds that when he uses methylene blue, his capacity is about 30% higher when he's doing his jiu-jitsu work. And that's huge, right? Yeah. And so that's another way you can use it more in more of a targeted way. But in the short term, maybe using it more regularly as you're getting your system more built up. And then over the long term, you're using it less.
So in that instance, like let's say you're going out and you're running a marathon. You take it one time, you take it the week leading up to the marathon. Like, how do you know how much to do next?
Yeah. So you'd want to try it in training first to see how it makes you feel. Right. But typically I'm using it as like every 4 hour kind of dosing. So I work with a guy here in Colorado that did the Leadville Ultra Marathon, which is 100 miles long. And we gave him 32 milligrams of methylene blue every 4 hours. It's not a small dose.
For how long though? Like
every 4 hours until he finished the race.
During the race?
During the race, yeah.
Oh,
during
wow.
Yeah, and he cut 3 hours off of his time from the year.
What? Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was a big lever for him. And I've seen this on a lot. I have a lot of athletes that use it, but don't want other people to know that they're using it.
It's like a secret weapon.
Cyclists, especially. Yeah. I have a couple cyclists that don't want anybody else to know that they're using it. But their urine's blue. So you have to be careful where they're peeing. Other than that, they'll typically swallow the methylene blue and have significant potential. So that's the other side of the spectrum here. And that's how I typically will use it myself, and is going to use it. Okay, I'm traveling these days, or have big days where I'm doing, a lot of media podcasts. I need my brain to work. Then I'm going to be using more of it because I think this is actually kind of a cool thing too. Like a master chess player, somebody that doesn't move for an entire day, burns like 5,000 calories, right? Not moving, just because of brain power. And so it might even be more than that. I have to look at the statistic, but it's a huge amount of caloric load just by concentrating on something. So even a lot of brain power, that's going to require a lot of mitochondria too.
Are you loving this conversation and want even more ways to live your happiest, healthiest, and most authentic life? Then we'd love for you to join our growing community on Substack. When you subscribe, you'll get bonus content and behind-the-scenes insights from us. Plus, you'll be the first to know about our upcoming programs and events. Your support helps us keep bringing inspiring guests and impactful conversations straight to you each week. So head to the link in our show notes, sign up today, and let's continue this journey together to create the art of living well. I'm just thinking of like all these different ways you could use it. And Marnie, first I was like, well, next time we do 29029.
I know that crossed my mind too, but I was like, okay, I'm not even going to go there.
No, but we were talking before we, I think, started recording about how we're going to use some and experiment. Yeah. And the one question I have, just real silly, is that whole, like, you're turning your mouth blue. Any like advice you have? Any way to avoid the mouth turning blue? I mean, occasionally it wouldn't be such a big deal, but if you're starting out and you're taking it every day, that may not be the look that we're going for.
I totally get it. Yeah. So methylene blue comes in a couple different types of forms. It comes in a liquid form. Liquids are messy. They're going to get everywhere. You can try to drop it in the back of your throat and prevent it from getting in your mouth. But liquids also have low potency typically, and they're typically more contaminated with heavy metals. You can get capsules. Capsules are okay, but often the potency is not what it's supposed to be. What we've developed at my company is something called a troche. It's a dissolvable lozenge that hypothetically would be between your upper cheek and gum and swallow and then dissolve up there. But if you do that, your mouth is going to get quite blue. Now, the good news with our stuff, well, actually the good news in general is that methylene blue is highly bioavailable, which means that whether you put in your mouth and dissolve it here in between your upper cheek and gum, or if you swallow it, almost all of it's going to get into the system, which is pretty rare for supplements and things like that. Most of the things lose a lot of potency when they go through your liver. It's something called first pass metabolism. The nice thing about a troche in general is that between your upper cheek and gum, it's going to be faster. But because methylene blue is so highly bioavailable, highly potent, whether you dissolve in the mouth or you swallow it, you can just swallow instead of getting it in your mouth and having your mouth be blue. Ideally, it's on an empty stomach. You have the methylene blue on an empty stomach, and you can eat maybe 20 or 30 minutes later. That'll help kind of push it forward and kind of metabolize a little bit faster. But the troche is great the way we developed it because we homogenize it in a way that we prevent as much as possible from having any contamination. So methylene blue itself, because it's made in a lab, it can be contaminated with heavy metals like lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. You don't want that, as we talked about. So what we do is we test everything once we get it from our ingredient manufacturer again, and we make sure it's clean, and then we put it in our products. And troches are really easy to make sure it's precision, so that you can take this troche. It's also scored, so it's got a little line across in the middle. And you can take a quarter, you can take a half, you can take a full, 3/4 obviously, and you can get exactly what you need. But you can swallow it in the end, Stephanie. So you don't have to have a blue mouth. But this is the only caveat there, is that it does work faster. And in some people with brain fog, especially related to infection, I found dissolving in the mouth does work faster and sometimes better than even dissolving it, or ingesting it and swallowing it.
Okay.
But if you're putting it in the back of your mouth like that, it's kind of sitting back there. Your whole mouth isn't turning blue, is it?
Yes, maybe if you keep it in one place and don't move it and you don't talk. Because if you talk, it all goes
everywhere.
Yeah. And so when we developed the products, we developed as troches because of the things I mentioned: higher potency typically for most ingredients, easy to titrate, and it's fast, right? But methylene blue during the pandemic, no problem. Put a mask on. Because that's we were the first company to come out with a product back in 2020, right before the pandemic, but with methylene blue in it, actually. But now we're not wearing masks, thankfully. Not everybody wants a blue mouth, and I totally get that. I don't. I mostly swallow it in the mornings when I take it too.
Okay.
So can you have water when you swallow it, or you can't have anything?
You can have water with it. Yeah.
Okay. And people feel the effects within the hour typically?
Good question. So typically within an hour to 2 hours. The half-life is about 4 hours, so about a 4-hour effect. The key also is this is really important too, is that it's not one of those things that builds up in your system over 30 days or whatever. When you find the right dose, you will know it. It's not like a stimulant like caffeine where you're going to feel stimulated. You should just feel elevated and things should just be easier. Brain fog should be better. Inflammatory kinds of symptoms should be improved. Your energy and capacity should be better. So you probably won't have that lull in the middle of the day as much as you did before. Your mood should be more stable. Those are sometimes for women, it's more obvious. Guys, I'm like, I have to kind of like really ask them questions. But for women, it's like, no, it was obvious. Like I knew it as soon as I found the right dose because of my mood, my energy, my capacity, the things that I just mentioned. Guys, I'm like, well, do you feel any better? Like, I don't know. I'm like, all right. At the end of your day, look back at it. Were you as tired as usual? They're like, yeah. You know what? Actually, I wasn't as tired as I was typically. So those are like, for men, we don't have as much capacity to have these sort of meta awareness kinds of things. But that's really the key, is that when you get to the right dose, you really should know.
Okay. Well, it sounds like it's a temporary, like it's not something you're using regularly, right? So
temporarily, you can use regularly in the beginning when you're first getting started with it, even 7 days a week in some cases. And as you get more optimized, you need it less. And that's what it comes down to.
But if it's out of your system so fast, that's not what's optimizing. You're doing other things, presumably, to optimize, and you're using this to kind of get you through. That's how I'm hearing it.
Yes, I use it as a bridge. It's a bridge. And people ask me sometimes, as a corollary to your question, will I become dependent on it, right? And the answer is, if you do nothing else differently and take methylene blue and stop it, you're going to feel the way you did before. But if you're doing things that were optimizing your health and you're taking methylene blue, then you start peeling it off, you're going to continue to feel better because you've been supported. There's some nuance there, Marnie, because there is some evidence that methylene blue can help with certain parts of the mitochondria and make them work better over the long term. So I think there is something there long term, but it's not how I message it, because I don't see it that way in clinical practice. I'm like, look, this is what we're going to do now to help you. Then long term, we're going to manage how your mitochondria are functioning. We're going to manage your stress. We're going to downregulate that, right? And we're going to do all of that. This is the way we're going to get you there. And this is how you're going to feel better. So we can have you make those initial jumps in the alphabet that we were talking about.
Yeah. And I like having this like additional tool in your toolkit to take when you're traveling. Maybe you have a big presentation or day where you're on, or you need a little boost, right? I'm really excited, I have to say.
Me
I like
too.
thinking of all these.
I mean, I have to tell you, we have one other product at my company. It's called Blue Canatine, and it's a combination of methylene blue with nicotine, caffeine, and CBD. This one is probably the favorite of the perimenopausal women age group because it has a little bit of nicotine and caffeine. Nicotine itself, I know, gets scary for people because of history, but low doses of nicotine when you don't smoke it or vape it, and the additives in all those products, is great for the brain. It helps with cognition, and it also decreases brain inflammation. And so a little bit of nicotine, just 1 milligram in the troche, and the dose is usually people take a half of the troche as the dose, with a little bit of caffeine, just a quarter cup of coffee, the methylene blue, and a little bit of CBD kind of rounds it out. You get 3 to 5 hours of focus, drive, productivity, just getting things done without come down or crash. With the caveat, though, is if you're already in that hypercortisol, hyperstress mode, that's not the product that I would be going for, okay? Because so many people reach out to me, and my patients even, they're like, Doc, I just need more energy. I just need more energy to get throughout the day. I just can't. I need more coffee. I need more stimulants. I'm like, actually, you don't. You need to actually have the opposite, which is, combination of mitochondrial support and down-regulating your nervous system. And so that's a conversation I have a lot with people. And so it's not more stimulants oftentimes. It's actually coming off the stimulants, supporting mitochondrial function, decreasing nervous system tone. And then that's when you're going to function at optimal capacity.
So what are the ways that you recommend people, do that?
Well, it's the short-term, medium-term, and long-term kinds of things here, right? When it comes to short-term, I've been talking about methylene blue. It's one of my favorite ways to support mitochondrial function, but also getting on hormones. If you're amenable to that, if you're a perimenopausal female and your hormones are going all over the place, getting on HRT can go a long way of helping. It could be just trying to start getting a little bit better sunlight, taking more breaks outside, working on your diet a little bit. Those are great. That's more like short, medium term for people because that can be difficult in the beginning. The other big thing is just down regulating the nervous system, as I was mentioning before, which is giving people ways to calm down. And again, not saying to calm down, but ways to calm down. And this could be things like breath work and yoga and mindfulness. But even that is more medium term for most people. It's not the initial thing. What I like to do is to give people the experience of what it feels like to have a nervous system that is not in fight or flight. And that usually requires supplementation, something that can give them the experience of calming down the nervous system. Now, this is not without risk, as I mentioned, right? Because if you come down on the nervous system a little bit too early and there's not enough support, especially in the mitochondria, this can make people feel like they crash. But even if you have them well supported, as anxiety and stress comes down, there can be reactive anxiety and stress related to not having that anxiety and stress. And so that takes some education. It takes some working with somebody to do it. And so I really like to leverage the GABA system. GABA is our primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. We talked about this with progesterone earlier. And so progesterone's one of the things you can use for sure. And that could be a big one. I can also use other compounds that leverage the GABA system. But GABA itself, GABA as a supplement, it shouldn't work for you. If you take GABA and you find that it works, GABA is too big of a molecule to get across into the brain. If it's working for you, it means that your blood-brain barrier is leaking things in that shouldn't get in there. It's called having a leaky brain or a leaky blood-brain barrier. So it's okay. Usually this means you have a leaky gut that needs to be addressed. And and I've had patients like this. They've GABA supplements are working like gangbusters. And then we optimize their gut. The gut's no longer leaky and the GABA supplements stop working. So I use other compounds, things like kava, CBD, CBG. I use another cool compound called magnolia bark or hanokiol for sleep, and agarine's another one, which I really like it's from the fly agaric mushroom. It's a psychedelic mushroom, but it's in low doses. It's not psychedelic. If you want psychedelic, that's other mushrooms really. And that's for a different topic for a podcast maybe. But those can really help for stress too in other ways. But the Amanita muscaria or fly agaric mushroom has this compound called agarine that I like a lot because it binds to the GABA receptor. It stays on there for about 6.5 hours. And so it's really great for sleep. So I find ways, especially sleep, which I haven't really mentioned a lot yet, but sleep is a big lever for people. So if people aren't sleeping well, that's the first thing that we really need to do to support mitochondrial function and to support their stress response.
So do you have any recommendations for products that will support GABA naturally in the body without taking a GABA supplement? Like you mentioned a bunch of different ingredients. Does your company have a product, or like as far as finding, because I think this topic is going to resonate with a lot of women who have trouble sleeping or waking up in the middle of the night.
You can find all these ingredients separately, the ones that I mentioned, except for the agarine. That one doesn't exist outside of a couple of products that we've made at my company. It's called Troscriptions is the company's name. And we have something called Trocom for anxiety stress reduction. You can take it during the day, and it has a number of these ingredients. What's nice about the Trocom is it doesn't make you feel tired. It just calms down the nervous system, which is nice because most people that take medications for anxiety and things like that, they feel very tired. It's not very conducive to like having a family and making dinner. And so it's a great alcohol alternative as well for people that, make their dinner and then take out the glass of wine or two while they're making it. Trocom's great because it downregulates the nervous system without, trashing your sleep like alcohol is going to, unfortunately. And we have another product called Troz that has 8 different ingredients that support sleep architecture. 2 of them are based on the GABA system. And I use that a lot in women and men and as well, because it's one of the most comprehensive products out there on the planet to really support all stages of sleep, not just to make you go to bed, actually support all your sleep architecture, your REM sleep, your non-REM sleep, and really give you the full comprehensive support that people need. So most things like melatonin, it's just one signal. It's not going to do it for most people. And if it does, it's not going to work for a long period of time. So in Troz, there's a little bit of melatonin, there's serotonin, 5-HTP in there. There's something called adenosine and cordycepin, which are working on the adenosine system. You have CBN and CBD, which are working on the endocannabinoid system. And then you have hanokiol and agarine, they're working on the GABA system. So it's a very comprehensive product for people as well to check out. So yeah, Trocom and Troz from Troscriptions, my company. And we also have on the methylene blue side, we have something called Just Blue, which is pure methylene blue. And we have something called blue cannatine, which is I mentioned earlier, which is more your focus productivity one.
And are these all third-party tested? And tell us how they're sourced.
100%. I've been a physician for a long time, Marnie. And when we started this company, the first thing we cared about was that we got the best stuff absolutely possible. And so we third-party test and fourth-party test everything. So third-party testing isn't enough anymore. Because if third-party testing, where was that third party actually who tested it? Was it a lab in the United States that tested it? Or was it a lab outside the country that third-party tested an ingredient coming from a manufacturer? There's a big scandal on creatine gummies over the last couple of years. I don't know if you saw it, but creatine gummies with no creatine in them.
Oh, yes. I did just hear about this, actually.
And then if you look at their website, it has a beautiful certificate of analysis that shows that these creatine gummies have exactly the amount of creatine they're supposed to have in them. Anybody can forge these things these days. And so you have to be super careful and really trust where you're getting things. And this maybe my other PSA, my public service announcement for this podcast, is to not buy supplements on Amazon.
Yes.
I know that's hard. You guys talk about this too, okay?
Yeah.
Because you just don't know what you're
all the
getting.
time.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I know we're going to start to run out of time, but we really do want to talk about hyperbaric oxygen. And so I'm going to pivot here from what we were just discussing. And some of our listeners may have heard of it. Others may not have. It's been used for a long time in hospitals and such. But then more recently, you can find different facilities around. I know there's one near us that has it. And so who's using it? Who should use it? Who can benefit? Break it down, I guess, for us.
So when it comes to hyperbaric oxygen therapy, this is a field that I've been involved with for a long time. And I love hyperbaric therapy because it drives more oxygen in circulation, helping you get more energy. And over time, it can decrease inflammation. It can get stem cells to release from the body, which are the baby cells that can make new tissue. It can heal tissue from the inside out. And I use it a lot in the context of optimizing somebody's health. The timing is the key. If you're already pretty stressed, as we've been talking about, hyperbaric therapy, probably not the best thing for you right now because it's going to cause more stress on the system. You might be able to use mild pressures. There's different pressures that we use in the chamber. The milder the pressures is not as stressful, but deeper pressures that are more healing, more stem cells, more optimization over the long term, they cause stress in the system too. So having a long-term optimization plan is key to make sure you're optimized so you really can benefit from it long term. But when you're more optimized, oh man, the capacity for your body to really see significant healing, decrease inflammation, improve brain function. I mean, I work with people all across the spectrum of health, anybody from high performers and athletes to people with mild cognitive impairment, to chronic infection, to kids on the spectrum, to chronic pain and everything. These are all related on some level to mitochondrial dysfunction that we talked about earlier. And methylene blue, GABA, all the things we mentioned are really, really helpful, long-term optimization. But hyperbaric therapy is like a supercharge for all that. Like once you have a good foundation, like if somebody comes to me tomorrow and says, hey doc, I want to get in the chamber, I have long COVID or something like that. I'm like, great. What are you doing to optimize your health otherwise first? Right. And if you're already on that path, and you're like, yeah, I'm working with a functional doc. I'm on these supplements. I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm like, perfect. Let's go. Right. But if you're like off the street, I have long COVID. I felt this way for 2 years. I'm desperate for something to make me feel better. Desperate is always a key word for stress response out of control. And I don't mean this in a bad way, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. If you feel desperate for things, I get it, but that is a stress response. And that's something that needs to be addressed before you're going to heal, most likely. And so I get emails from patients like, I'm desperate to feel better, right? I'm desperate. I get it. I want you to feel better too, but that stress response, I've seen people go through hyperbaric therapy, not get better. And it's because their stress response is through the roof. They're not going to heal even in a chamber that should heal you, right? And so think about it in that context. It is a fantastic healing modality. And if you have an acute issue, like acute trauma, acute injury, acute inflammation, I often tell patients or people that are listening, if you need to get checked out in the hospital, please do that. Okay. But otherwise do not pass go. Use hyperbaric therapy to heal faster because it's going to heal almost any acute injury faster than you would otherwise. And I see this countless times. Is it an acute ACL tear? Is it a brain injury? Is it, God forbid, a stroke? Obviously go to the hospital, get checked out. But after all that, hyperbaric therapy is going to help you heal faster.
And is that one session?
Well, it depends on what we're using it for. So if it's more of an acute issue, less treatment is going to go a long, long way. 3 to 5 sessions can be gigantic. They did a study in traumatic brain injury. 3 sessions with severe TBI decreased mortality by half. Okay. And so 50% less death with severe TBI.
Wow.
So, but if you have a long-term issue, you're not just working on leveraging your physiology to heal faster. You're looking at recalibrating it from the ground up, like your scaffolding, I call it. And that takes longer. We're talking about 20, 30, sometimes 40 hyperbaric sessions to see the benefit. And that's usually done 5 days a week for that time frame. So there's lots of different protocols you can do depending on the situation. And I often, I work with people all the time, all over the world on how to do this. But that's the main driver is like, is it an acute issue? Is it a chronic issue?
I think we need to have you back on because there's so much to talk about still. And I know we need to wrap up the conversation.
I'm happy to. I'd be happy to come back. Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's something that someone can do today after listening to this conversation to make their mitochondria function better. What would be the number one thing you would tell people?
Well, what I would not tell them, what they need to do is calm the fuck down. Because stress is killing us, right? And so understanding that it's time to recalibrate how we live our life. It's time to recalibrate what is true, what is healing, what is going to give us longevity and health span and that morbidity compression, right? And so, and know that it's not your fault. This is society and this is what we've been programmed to do. But there are different ways, and we've talked about a lot of ways here, to start recalibrating your system and go slow and give yourself a break. It's not going to be easy. And if you fall off the wagon, it's okay. Begin again, as we say in meditation, right? And I think that's a big piece for people is that a lot of us that are type A, I was just talking to somebody on my team yesterday. She's like, we didn't get 100% on this. I'm like, I know, but it's going to be okay. You're type A, like you want to do things like 100% of the way good, right? Like it's not, that's not life. Life, we have children most, like life is about living and just doing the best we can. And sometimes it's not going to be that great. It's okay. There's tomorrow, or there's the next moment. And so calming down the nervous system with mitochondrial support is my main driver of education these days. And so that's what I would leave with people is to think about it in those contexts.
That's great advice. And everyone, I believe, can benefit from that.
Yeah.
And simple, not easy. So Dr. Scott, real quick, where can people find you? And we will link up everything in the show notes, including the products that you mentioned. And I know there'll be a code for our listeners to get a discount if they want to make a purchase.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for having me, ladies. So where you can find me personally, my name is Dr. Scott Sherr. My website is drscottsherr.com, DrScottsherr.com. If you're interested in the products, which I would actually encourage you to think about as a way to kind of bridge again, Troscriptions is the name of the company. TRO scriptions, so the word troche and the word prescription mashed up into Troscriptions.
Nice.
And you can check it out at troscriptions.com. We're on the socials and all those places. We've had blogs going back 6 years. We're the first company to really bring methylene blue to market as a commercial product. And I use this in clinical practice all the time. So you can check it out at troscriptions.com. You can save 10% on your order by using your code. I think it's going to be Living Well, but we'll have that in the show notes as well. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. And really quickly, Dr. Scott, what does the art of living well mean to you?
One moment at a time.
Love it.
Beautiful.
Not that I do that all the time, but that's that's the goal.
That's the goal, right? Nobody can do that all the time.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We will definitely have to reach out to have you come back on for a part 2. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, ladies. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Art of Living Well podcast. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more people discover our show.
And if you're ready to take your health and happiness to the next level, we would love to support you. Whether it's through our transformative group programs, personalized coaching, or functional medicine lab testing, we help uncover the root causes of your health challenges and unlock your vitality.
Visit www.theartoflivingwell.us to learn more and book a free discovery call. Until next time, keep creating your art of living well.